Hey there! Welcome if this is your first time tuning into my channel, or welcome back to Through Nicky's Lens. I am Nicky, yours truly, and I have another video for you today. I have been getting some questions in relation to how to input your Canadian work experience or your work experience if it is that you studied in Canada and you were working whilst as a student. Let's get into the video. There are instances in which persons would have started in a particular role, and whilst as a student, that is, they still maintain that same job after they graduated from their studies. So, the big question is, how should I input that into my Express Entry profile? Should I claim work experience or that work experience from the time when I was a student until after I completed my studies and started working? So this came as sort of an area where it does pose some sort of confusion. Do you input the times in your Express Entry whilst you were a student or only the time after you applied for your post graduation work permit? So I sought advice from an immigration lawyer and he clarified this for me. Yes, I know that any work experience, particularly Canadian work experience whilst as a student, does not count towards your CRS points in your Express Entry profile. As such, you would understand that you could not put that work experience whilst you were a student in your Express Entry profile to gain points. So, the question, I guess, boils down to how do you really input that information? And that's what I want to address for you today. So, I posed a scenario to you in which someone might have started working in Canada whilst they were a student in a particular job, and they maintained that job after they finished their studies. Particularly, this would have been a job that is high skilled, and as such, you know that somehow you should get some sort of points for that Canadian work experience. What I was advised by that immigration lawyer is that you do not put the information for the time period that you were a student in your Express Entry profile. You would start that work experience from the time you applied for your post graduation work permit. Now, a lot of us should know that you can no longer do flagpoling to get your post graduation work permit. So it's not that when you finish your studies, you can go um, to flagpole after you've gotten your completion letter, like the day after or the same day that you got your letter of completion. You have to upload that letter of completion in your GC key and apply for your post graduation work permit online. There are instances when persons are waiting for a good while, maybe a few months, for that post graduation work permit to be processed. There is, I'm not sure if it's a temporary policy, but right now and for some time now, especially I believe during COVID, I don't know if it happened before, any time that you work in Canada, once you submit your application for a work permit, anytime that you work during that time still counts towards valid or eligible Canadian work experience. So, for a student that was working in a high skill job while they were a student, they completed their studies, they would simply input that work experience in their Express Entry profile from the day that they actually filed their post graduation work permit. And any time that you worked whilst as a student, you would not put that in your Express Entry profile, because any period of time that you input, if you input when you started the job, when you were actually a student, until the date that you are putting in your profile, then you would gain points for that. and it would be points that you technically should not get. As such, it's best to be cautious to put the information in from the time you filed for your post graduation work permit. So you may be wondering, where do you put that information in the profile, that work experience that you gained while you were a student? You will put that information in your PR application after you have gotten that invitation to apply. So there will be a personal history section that asks for you to input every activity that you have done within the last 10 years. So you would put that period when you were a student. There should be no gaps. Say, for example, you were a student for 2 years, you put that in. You were working during that same 2 years, you put in another field and you put that same time period, but you indicate work. Before the period whilst you were a student, you would put that you were a student at that point. In the instance where you are working whilst as a student, you would put student during that time frame, and then you will input another section that captures the time frame that you have been working, and you would put worker. So that's simply how you address that in your Express Entry profile. Now, you know that I always do research. I go to the source, that's IRCC's website, and I find information to back up whatever I share with you. So I did a Google search and I found a link on IRCC's website that says, can I count student work experience toward the Express Entry work requirement? And this is a little bit different. And the answer is it depends on where you were working and studying. So, to be eligible for Express Entry, you must meet the minimum requirements for one or more Express Entry programs. This includes the work experience requirement. So, it tells you using student work experience for minimum requirements. And it says for Federal Skilled Worker Program, student work experience gained while you were studying in Canada or abroad counts towards the minimum requirements for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. If it was paid by wages or commissions, it was continuous, that means there were no gaps in employment, and it meets all other requirements of the program. And that includes co-op and apprenticeships. Canadian Experience Class rather, and Federal Skills Trade Program, student work experience doesn't count towards the minimum requirements for Canadian Experience Class or the Federal Skills Trade Program. And how your student work experience affects your profile ranking is that Canadian work experience gained while you were a full-time student doesn't count towards the score used to rank your profile. And your work experience gained while as a full-time student outside of Canada, that counts towards the score used to rank your profile. So that would count towards your foreign work experience, and hence it would fall under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So I will definitely share this link and you can look more into this to see exactly what they mean. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video to the end. I want to thank you for your support over the 1 year that I've been making videos and posting on YouTube. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing this video. Like the video if you have not already done so. Don't just watch. It helps if it is that you engage with me in the comments, you continue to ask your questions. Thank you so much to everyone that tends to ask questions. Thank you for sharing the video with somebody. I'm thanking you in advance. I want to thank you so much for making it through Nikki's Lens, and I'll see you in my next video.